This is the Graco Magnum Project Painter Plus. It's an airless paint sprayer, and will it work for what we need? Let's find out. This Graco Magnum Project Painter Plus is set up like a professional paint tool. It's an airless sprayer. It'll run out of 5-gallon buckets or 1-gallon buckets. But it's really made where it's a Project Painter Plus. It's made more towards the homeowner and not the professional. But it'll work in a professional environment. It's just the tips are a little bit different and the setup is super simple. Now, when we first got this tool, we bought this to do the priming and painting inside of our house after the drywall was done. And we've used the snot out of it. I've been trying to talk about this, but every time I start talking, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man have to go by on their fart can machines. Those big motorcycles. Everybody has to drive down this road because it's out in the country. But I want to talk about the setup of this machine. It's basically simple. It's got 3 letters on it: A, B, and C. A is just your on and off switch. B is your settings from start all the way up to wide open. That's a high spray, high volume spray. And keep it low. You start low and work your way up to find the pattern that you want. And when you're starting the machine up, the C is flipped out, and that's prime. And what you want to do is put this down in the paint, and you take this little piece here, which I just leave it on the hose usually. Put this down in the paint. Where's the ant? And it draws up from here while it's on prime, and it pushes it back out and flushes the system out and gets the machine primed. And when you're ready to use the gun, you just flip this down, and then you take your gun, you put it into the paint can, and you hold pressure in on the gun until you relieve, get all of the, where it's been clean, get all the water and the storage fluid and stuff like that out, until you get good clean fresh paint coming out your tip. And then when you get ready to spray, you just slowly bump it up. Well, this thing has been in storage. Hang on, there's another giant. Now, I use this thing, like I said, and I've done all of our primer with it, but when you're putting primer on, primer is basically glue. So if you're just spraying it on drywall, you really need to back roll it. Now, there's a big controversy about that, whether you should back roll or not, but I think you should. And if you don't get all the dust off your walls, you're going to have some issues also. So you really need to, let's take a look here. Back rolling just helps it adhere and encapsulates the dust. But this has been wiped down, and it's still covered with drywall dust. If you leave too much dust on the wall, even if you back roll later on, it may peel off because it doesn't stick to this dusty surface. Now we went around and painted around the outlets. I don't know if I'm going to spray this in here or not. We've had this like this drywall's been up 3 or 4 years, and I've still not primed it. We'll get around to it eventually. What I was saying about primer basically being glue, it's a primer sealer, and it seals. Spraying gives you like a textured finish, and the thicker the primer, the more textured it is when you spray. But you can eliminate that by adding just a little bit of Flotrol, whatever it's called, by Flood. It's supposed to eliminate brush marks and roller marks and improves flow and leveling, but it does really good, I found, putting just a little bit in your in your primer when you're spraying it. The only problem, if you get it too thin, it tends, with these guns, it'll tend to run on you a whole lot. But you don't want to spray it on there so thick that it has a really rough texture either. And that's why I like back rolling. You can back roll after you spray with this, and depending on the nap of your roller, you can leave a little bit of texture behind, like an eggshell finish, and the paint that you put over top sticks really good. Looks really nice. And without that texture finish, I believe that everywhere that there is a mud patch, you'll have a smooth spot, or a smooth spot here and a rough spot here. Whenever you don't back roll, your mud tends to be slicker when they finish it down, and your paper seems to be a little rougher. So if you don't back roll, you'll have a shiny spot and a dull spot, even when you put your final coat of paint on. Now, I'm no professional painter, but I've seen it, and I've seen what it does. So I like back rolling. It just gives you a little bit of a texture, the whole entire finish. And if you use a satin type paint, it really takes a lot of the imperfections out of the wall. The finisher's done okay with our finishing work, but they didn't do the best job in the world. That's a big dent right there. And of course, this has been open forever, and it ain't really come apart, or the tape ain't come loose in this humid garage, so I guess it's done okay. When I was saying a while ago, I've done what every other homeowner's probably done. I just run water through it whenever I cleaned it up. Can't catch a break. I think they've sent a text message to everybody in the county saying that I'm filming. Every time I turn the camera on, some giant beast of equipment comes by. But what I done originally when I put this away, I just flushed the water through it, got it good and clean, and then put it in storage. And that's not smart. When I got it out to set it up for painting these cabinets I'm working on, right inside there where that hose connects is a check ball. And like I said, that primer and stuff is like glue, and that check ball was just stuck. I couldn't get it loose. I took it out and I cleaned it. But what you really should do, this even comes in your kit when you get your paint sprayer. This is called pump armor. When you're going to store it, you need to, you take this hose off right here, and then you put this dip tube and tip on your bottle here. Then you stick it up in there like a syringe, and you fill this pump up until you see it come out this little primer hose. Till it comes out this little hose here, comes out it. And that will make sure that whenever you put it away, that your check ball, I guess it kind of protects it from sticking. I didn't do that, like a lot of people don't. That's a dumb move. They give it to you free. There's no reason why you shouldn't put this in there and protect your pump. Plus, if it freezes, it's not going to freeze the pump. If I don't have a heated building, I'm lucky that it didn't freeze and bust the bottom of the pump off. We'll see, I guess. But you should always use this pump armor. It doesn't cost a lot, and you can put a little in. Also spray through your hose a little bit and get your gun and everything. It's not really to protect your gun, it's more to protect your pump. Of course, you don't want to put it in a spot where it can freeze and that hose and everything have water in it. And it also comes with really good detailed instructions. Simple, has your ABCs on it. Simple how to set it up. Simple how to set up your spray and unclog it. The spray tip has an arrow on it. It's shaped like an arrow. Now sometimes it'll clog. It did last night when I was spraying some. So you take, and when it clogs, you let off your gun. You take this spray tip, you spin it around backwards until the arrow is pointing towards the gun, and that opens the orifice up back here. Looks like it's clogged right now. It opens the orifice up. When you spray the gun, it blows it backwards to the tip, cleans it out. When you get the tip good and clean, you just reverse it and put it back pointing forward again, and you're good to go. I'm using a heavy bodied tip in it. I think it's a 15, I believe what it says on it. 15K, 18M, whatever that is. But I found out something. These tips in these homeowners versions are different. I got one of the pro tips for lightweight stuff, It has different numbers and has a different bottom on it for putting your seals and stuff in. So it didn't work. So I'm stuck with I forget what I get, was really expensive, that little tip was. But these tips wear out and you have to replace them pretty regular. They don't wear out instantly, but you run a lot of paint through them. But look at that. I cleaned that thing out good and it's covered with paint. I'll probably end up having to soak that. But also another thing you can do before you use your paint, I've got these strainer bags. They're made in China. You can get them, I think there's like 12 or something in this bag. You put it down in a nice clean bucket, and then you pour your primer or your paint into that bucket after you've mixed it. Make sure it's after you mixed it. And every now and then there'll be little sticky strings and stuff that's in your paint, especially if it's a used bucket. And once you put the paint that you're going to use in that bucket, you pull up on this bag and lift it out of there, and it strains all your thick solid pieces out, or rust if it's out of an old can. This will strain it out and keep the little fine sediment. It leaves the solids in for your paint, but it gets the sediment out so it won't go through your gun and clog your tip, ruin your pump. I suggest you do that. These are so cheap. They're probably less than $1 a piece. I suggest you do that every time you run paint through one of these airless sprayers. It's just good practice to get into. And also use that pump armor every time you get done with it and clean it out really good. Hook a garden hose to it and flush the system completely out as best you can, and then fill it full of pump armor. And make sure that you leave it that way every time you're going to leave it for any period of time. Now, I can't complain about this thing. Of course, it says made in USA, but it also says from Global Components. But Graco's been around for a long time. They've been the paint leader, as far as I'm concerned, for a really long time. And I've tried every other kind. I use that gum that Wagner sells has got the hose on it. I thought that was a joke. Maybe they're the same company, I don't know, but they sure crappy stuff. I haven't bought a Wagner yet that I was happy with. But the Graco, so far, that's the first one I've ever used, and I think they're awesome. They're great for doing trim. Of course, I'm using too big of a tip really to do trim work and stuff with, because I really need a finer tip and put a little more of that Floetrol. But it says on the bottle on this Floetrol that this is latex additive, of course. It says on this Floetrol that it will actually take a little bit of sheen. If you're using like gloss paint, it'll dull it down to like a semi-gloss. I think you use about 8 ounces per gallon or something is what it says on here. But I just put a little in just to level it out a little bit better. That levels out really good. I've been putting it in this primer. You ain't supposed to use drywall primer on wood. Like I said, it's made for paper and sticking to stuff. And it also don't have a protector in it. I'm using this old CDX plywood. There's a lot of tannins in it, a lot of resins. And when you put that water-based glue type drywall primer on, one thing that'll do, it can delaminate. If you soak it really bad, it'll delaminate your plywood, plus all the tannins will come to the surface. I'm going to spray those pine pieces here in a minute, and you'll see those knots. They'll come out, but I'm going to put a real good top coat on it, and then it should be just fine. I'm using this drywall primer because it's what I have. It's not recommended for any wood product. You're supposed to use drywall primer just on drywall because that's what it's made for. Because like I said, it's more of a glue than a paint. It's good for promoting adhesion when you're trying to stick paint to paper and that old plaster. Now we set our mesh bag up. We poured some of that primer in here. Once you pour it through the mesh bag, all you do, which these are reusable, I suppose. They're made out of nylon. Then you just lift it up and let it drain. That gets all your boogers out of there that you'd normally have either clogging your spray tip, or if you was using a roller rolling on your wall. It's best to do this every time you paint, whether you're using a spray gun or using a roller or brush. Strain it. Don't take just a couple minutes. It doesn't cost that much extra, and it's worth it. Now we've got our machine set up for prime. Starts off, we got it set on start. Got the primer valve flipped up, which is a C there. Now when I turn it on, there might be a little bit of water in it, or I don't think there's no pump oil, but it should start spraying paint right back into the bucket. clean paint, just flip your lever down, that charges the hose. I know there's water in this hose, so I'm going to, oh boy, I'm going to try to spray it down here without drowning myself. Spray it on this mesh bag until I start seeing paint. A lot of water in it. Now we're starting to get into the heavier stuff, starting to get into paint now. It's about the paint. Now I'm going to spray it into the bucket. Good solid paint. I got it on the lowest setting. And let's see how it does on these test pieces here. If it leaves a tail at the top or the bottom, then you got it too low. Well, done it the wrong way. Well, that's kind of misty, isn't it? I see some spits. So I'm going to bump it just a tiny little bit. A little heavier. Man, it's spitting still. Well, it may just be, it has a little water in it. And that's not ideal to paint plywood, but especially CDX. It ain't got a pretty side. It all has, CDX has all these big knots in it and cutouts. Well, somehow I managed to get paint on my camera lens. But it does pretty good. I think I'll leave it right there. I might turn the pressure up just a little bit. We'll see how this puddles up here and take a look at it after it dries a little bit. And I'm just going to hook this on this bucket. Leave it for right now. It should be fine for a few minutes. Doesn't take, when you aerosol this on, it doesn't take it long at all to dry. That's the good thing about it. I could have separated them a little bit because they will dry together. Okay, we'll come back in a few minutes and take a look. I think I might spray these corners a little bit. It's hard to keep my camera pointed at my work. Dust on the wall. The paint on my window. I'm just experimenting. Well, this dried up pretty nice. Take my light. Even where there was the drips that had come out of the end of the gun, because you put that Floetrol from flood in there, it just flattens it right out. Even the drips, they don't show. There's a spot that wasn't a drip, it's just where something was on it apparently. Looks like it had some sawdust on it and stuff. These are just rough pieces I was experimenting with. It's good and dry, just takes a few minutes to dry. But you can see what I was talking about earlier, how the tannins in the wood will come out in the glues. If you don't use the right kind of primer, which this is not, this is drywall primer, it lets these splotches shine through, and I don't like that. That's not the best way to do it, but these are just for closet shelves that we're building, and we're using what CDX plywood we had and some 1x lumber. It's dress lumber, but it's not the best quality, but we're going to paint it white, put it in a closet, and you'll never see it again. So what do we think about this Graco Magnum Project Painter Plus? Well, it's good for painting the first coat on your house, but you got to do a lot of taping when you're doing interiors. And for this old knotty pine that I'm going to use as shelves inside of a closet, it puts a good coat of paint on it. Now this is not dried, it's still shiny. It's got a tiny little bit of texture because I'm using drywall primer, but drywall primer sticks. It's not ideal, but it's what I have. I've got a 5-gallon bucket, which I think is $100 and something bucks, so I'm not going to throw it away. I still got this whole garage to do, but I've got plenty of paint to finish inside that garage. And a little more sheetrock. There's an attic in this garage. It has to be primered and painted too. But for what it does, it paid for itself a long time ago. The money we saved on hiring a pro to come in and paint, and the time we saved. I see 3 little drips right there, but they should flatten out with that Floetrol in there. I don't have a bit of worry about them staying there. They'll disappear when it dries. If they don't, a little bit of light sanding takes care of it. I'm happy with it. I'm very impressed. I'm definitely not going to complain about it. Now it's basically, since I finished the house with it, it's basically free. It's paid for itself more than once. So it'll also do oil paint, I didn't mention earlier. I've never sprayed oil through one of these, but you really got to wear a mask and stuff when you fool with oil paint, and you need to tape everything off. If I was outside with oil paint, there's no way I would spray with the vehicles this close. Which this latex don't do very good either, but you get oil paint on one of these cars sitting around, and it'll aerosol. It'll dry instantly, and it's a pain in the butt to get off, even if the car has a good coat of wax on it. But I like it. I'm happy with it. I've fully tested this thing. The only issue I had was my own fault, where I let the water sit in there and stick that check valve that was inside of it. That's my fault. A lot of people does that. When you finish with these, cleanup is just as easy as startup. I'll take it out of this paint bucket, and I'll put it in a bucket of clean water. That's not clean water, but I'll put it in a bucket of clean water and circulate the clean water through it. And when I'm completely done with it, I'll hook the hose to it and flush the gun and the nozzle until it's completely paint free and no colors coming out. And then I'll take that injector bottle of that storage solution and fill it full of that, and then it should set as long as you want it to set without any issues. That is the Graco Magnum Project Painter Plus. It's the homeowner's version, but it's got a lot of pro features that make it worth having. I think it has a 25-foot hose. It's not a very long hose. I bought a 50-foot hose someplace, and I have no idea what I've done with it. It disappeared almost immediately. So it's, I hate to blame any contractors, but this house, there was people in now this house, so where it went, who knows. I bought another adapter to it for doing the ceilings. I got this, I think it's about a 24-inch adapter that moves your tip 24 inches away from the gun. I also have, which it's way up here, I got paint stuff sitting everywhere. I bought the roller attachment. So this garage here, unless I tape everything, I'm going to have to roll this, but I can use this roller attachment. And I got extra rollers, which are very expensive. I think the rollers are like 20 bucks or something. But this thing, you can clean them too. It cleans up really easy. Of course, this is latex. I'm not sure if it extends or not. I don't think it does. But with the paint gun and this on your hand, you can roll all the way up to an 8-foot ceiling. No issues at all with the paint nozzle on there. It's kind of awkward because you're having to mash that trigger and feed the latex to it. You mash the trigger, you don't have to keep it on. Get your roller wet, just like dipping it in a pan. You mash the trigger, wet the roller, roll it till you run out, and then hit it again. It works fantastic. I like it. And that's probably, like I said, that's another attachment that's kind of expensive. I don't remember how much it is. I'll link all this stuff in my Amazon store. There's my Amazon link. There's the cabinet that I've been building for the closet. This has already been primed. It's had filler put in it. There was a lot of those big football size cutouts on this wood, and I filled it. And the thing about that self-leveling primer, when you put that Floetrol in there, it'll fill in a lot of these voids, and then when you put a finish coat on it, the only thing it don't do is it don't have a stain blocker, so wouldn't hurt to put a stain blocking primer on top of it, but where it's going to be hidden, I'm not going to. I put all this together with pocket holes, so there are no face nails, no face screws. I got 16-inch, 12, I think another 12, and then 10, 10, and 10 on the shelves. This will go in the center of a wall, and there'll be shelves that wing off of it on either side. So this will be for, you can put shoes or whatever you want to in this cabinet. It'll look really nice when it's done. I was going to try to get a finish coat on it today, a gloss coat, but I'm not going to get all of my, Matt's got truck trouble, we're having to work on it. I don't think I'm going to get all my priming done today. I don't want to switch back and forth between paints. I'll have my priming done by tomorrow, and then I'll try to put some gloss on. Like I said, it's not going to be real glossy because that Floetrol takes a little bit of the sheen out of it, but it ain't going to hurt nothing. I use a lot of pocket hole screws. I messed up at first because I set my depth for 3/4 plywood, but this is only 5/8 plywood. And every time I put a screw in, it was popping out the side. That was another dumb mistake. But once I reset my jig, everything worked just fine. I went back and put shorter screws in wherever I popped them out the side and the holes was too deep. It worked good. I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out. I have tested this tool. I've reviewed this tool, this Graco paint sprayer, airless paint sprayer. It's made in USA. I've reviewed it, and I'm very happy with it. I've never used the professional version. I've seen them used on jobs, and them guys, they flip in and out of colors like it wasn't nothing. They tape everything up, and they spray the whole entire house. They spray the trim. They do it all. It's amazing. But I'm not that patient. I may tape this room off. I probably will, and just spray it. But I got a lot of concrete in here. My floors ain't done yet, so I hate to get aerosol spray everywhere. It's still debating on that. I may put tarps down. Who knows? We'll see when it's done, I guess. I thank y'all for stopping by. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. We do other content. We review every tool that we buy and try out and use. I like to wait a little while and get some hours in before we do a review on this stuff. Some of the tools I've just bought, and I'll probably have to do follow-ups on them. But I've had this a while, and I've used it a lot. I think the tip is getting just a bit warm because I've run so much heavy body primer through it, and that's where I'm getting my little splatters because I tried high pressure and low pressure, and changing the pressure is not helping. So I think the tip's just getting kind of oval shaped. I'll pick up some more tips, and it'll be just fine. It's fine for what I'm doing anyway. I'm just doing closet stuff, and I may prime this garage. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for riding along. And everybody stay clean.